The planet Calith stretched wide beneath the silver light of its sun. Endless deserts melted into deep forests and jagged mountains pierced the sky. Strange creatures moved across the land, their shapes strange, their minds sharp. They hunted in packs, hunted alone, and survived by learning the ways of the land. Some of them could think ahead, set traps, or mimic sounds to trick others. Calith was alive in its own way, but humans had left it behind long ago. Centuries passed and no human foot had touched its soil. Then one quiet day, a small human ship broke the stillness of orbit. Its metal hull reflected the sun, and within it, 3 humans studied the planet with wide eyes. Captain Thomas Reed stood at the bridge, his hands resting lightly on the controls. Beside him, scientist Olivia Moore scanned the surface with instruments, her brow furrowed in concentration. Engineer Daniel Scott checked the ship's systems, making small adjustments here and there. They had come far, across star systems, to return to a world that humans had long forgotten. "Look at that," Thomas said softly, pointing to a herd of long-legged creatures moving across the plains. Their fur shimmered under the sun, and their eyes were intelligent, alert. Olivia studied her scanner. "They are more organized than we expected. Not just wild animals, they understand the world around them." Daniel shook his head. "It's like the planet learned to survive without us. They've evolved to manage themselves." Thomas smiled, a calm but determined smile. "Then we need to be careful. We can't just step in and change things. We observe first. We respect." They chose a flat valley surrounded by low hills for their landing. The ground was soft but firm and a small stream ran nearby. Carefully the ship's landing gear touched the soil, stirring up small clouds of red dust. The creatures of Calith noticed immediately. A group of tall, thin beings with sharp claws froze at the edges of the valley, watching silently. Their heads tilted, ears twitching. Curiosity, not fear, held them in place. Thomas, Olivia, and Daniel stepped out, wearing light protective suits. They carried tools, small containers, and devices meant for research, not harm. Thomas knelt to touch the soil, letting it fall slowly through his fingers. "We are visitors," he said quietly, though he knew the creatures could not understand words. "We come to learn. We come to respect your home." For days the humans worked quietly. They set up small shelters, not larger than necessary. They built labs with glass walls so they could study the creatures without disturbing them. Olivia took samples of plants, insects, and water, while Daniel tested the soil and atmosphere. Thomas wandered the lands, mapping the valleys, forests, and streams. The creatures watched from a distance. Some were bold, stepping closer to inspect the humans. A small, furry creature with bright eyes approached Olivia while she collected water from the stream. It sniffed at her hand, then scampered back into the forest. Thomas noticed it and nodded. "They are learning about us as much as we are about them." At night, the valley glowed softly under the twin moons of Calith. The humans sat around a small fire in the shelter, talking quietly about what they saw. "They are clever," Olivia said. "They know when we are a threat and when we are not. They watch us but they don't attack. It's like they understand respect." Daniel leaned back. "It's strange. They act wild but their eyes, there's wisdom there. And patience. We are guests here, not rulers." Thomas looked out across the valley toward the dark shapes moving in the distance. "We will not conquer this world. We will survive with it, not over it. That's the lesson humans forgot a long time ago." Slowly a pattern formed. The humans would set up a shelter here, a lab there, always leaving space between themselves and the creatures. They moved slowly without loud machines or bright lights, so they would not frighten the animals. The creatures began to trust them in small ways, watching from closer distances, testing their curiosity but never harming the humans. One morning, a creature unlike the others approached the humans boldly. It was taller, stronger, and had a sleek, dark coat. Its eyes were sharp, scanning the humans with an intelligence that made even Thomas step back slightly. The creature made soft, clicking sounds, circling the humans slowly. Olivia extended her hand carefully, showing no threat. The creature stopped, cocked its head, then stepped closer, letting her touch its fur. Daniel and Thomas watched, astonished. "They are teaching us," Thomas whispered. "They are deciding if we can be part of this world." Weeks passed. The humans learned how to move silently, how to predict the creatures' paths, how to live in a way that did not disturb the natural order. They planted small gardens to test the soil but did so far from where the creatures hunted. They documented behaviors, patterns, and signals. Slowly the creatures began to approach the humans more openly. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, a group of creatures gathered at the edge of the valley. Some carried small offerings, fruits, shells, and stones. Thomas watched, understanding dawning. The creatures were sharing. They had accepted the humans not as rulers but as companions. Olivia smiled softly. They respect us, and they teach us without words. Daniel nodded. It's strange, isn't it? We thought we would teach them. But it's the other way around. They have survived here without us for centuries. We are learning from them. Thomas stood tall, looking at the valley below, now filled with soft shadows and gentle sounds of life. Then we will be guardians, not masters. Observers, not conquerors. That is the way we survive here, with patience, respect, and quiet strength. The humans continued their work, day after day. They documented, studied, and shared knowledge among themselves. The creatures followed, curious but careful. Slowly, a bond formed, not of domination but of mutual understanding. The planet Calith, long forgotten, had found humans again. But this time humans had come to learn, to respect, and to survive alongside its intelligent inhabitants. And in that quiet valley beneath the twin moons and the endless sky, a new chapter began. One where humans and creatures of Calith coexisted, each learning from the other, each growing stronger in patience, intelligence, and trust. Weeks passed quietly on Calith, and the humans settled into a steady rhythm. Olivia spent her days observing the creatures, taking notes and recording behaviors. One morning, she noticed something unusual, a small creature with golden eyes peeking from behind a rock. It was fast, nimble, and moved with careful curiosity. It did not attack or flee. Instead, it sat quietly, watching her as she worked with a small tool to dig a hole for a water trough. Over the next days, the golden-eyed creature returned. It watched Daniel building a simple irrigation system, saw Thomas organizing their small camp, and observed Olivia planting seeds in carefully prepared soil. Slowly, the creature began to mimic them. It carried small twigs, placed stones to mark paths, and even nudged pieces of metal around, trying to do what the humans were doing. Olivia smiled when she saw it. "Look at that," she said to Thomas and Daniel. "It's learning from us." Thomas nodded. "Not because we force it. We show the way and it chooses to follow. That's important. Respect, not fear." Daniel built small water systems that drew from the nearby stream, creating pools for the creatures to drink safely. He dug channels that carried water to little gardens filled with plants they had brought from their ship. At first, the creatures only watched, hesitant to approach. But the golden-eyed one was different. It stepped forward, touched the water, and even tried to move some of the stones into place, just like Daniel had done. As days turned into weeks, the creatures began to change. Those that had once fought each other for food started forming small groups near the human camp. They did not abandon their survival instincts, but they began cooperating in small ways, sharing food, alerting each other to danger, and mimicking human routines. They moved more smoothly, more efficiently, and the valley slowly became quieter, calmer, and more organized. Thomas organized daily routines for the humans, checking the shelters, maintaining the water system, planting and harvesting small gardens, and documenting creature behavior. He did not issue commands to the creatures, but his presence and calm confidence set a rhythm they could follow. Slowly, the other creatures observed, learned, and adapted. Olivia noticed that the golden-eyed creature often led the others, showing them what to do. It became clear that it understood not just humans but the benefits of cooperation. When one group of creatures tried to hoard food, the golden-eyed one nudged them gently, guiding them to share with others. Daniel laughed quietly. "It's teaching the others what we show it." The humans' influence grew without them ever forcing control. They worked beside the creatures, built together, and showed the value of planning, patience, and cooperation. The creatures began trusting them, sometimes even waiting for the humans to finish a task before trying it themselves. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the valley. The humans and creatures rushed to take shelter. The golden-eyed creature led a small group to the human shelters, showing them where to hide under overhanging rocks and behind makeshift walls. Thomas watched in amazement. "They are learning more than we expected," he said. "They see safety and order in what we do." By the end of the storm, the valley was wet but calm. The creatures huddled near the humans, and for the first time, they seemed to accept the humans as a part of their world. Even the shyest creatures came close, exploring tools, water channels, and gardens. They copied tasks like carrying small stones, arranging sticks to block water, and moving plants to better spots. Over time, the humans realized something extraordinary. Their goal had been simple: survive without harming the creatures and learn from the planet. But the creatures had begun to teach themselves, to form their own rules, and to thrive in a world that had once been chaotic. Small packs of creatures would now work together, sometimes even helping the humans with simple tasks, carrying tools or bringing water. Olivia knelt in the soft soil one evening, watching the golden-eyed creature place a small stick in the garden to mark a row of plants. "It understands care," she said softly. "It's more than survival. It's understanding life." Thomas nodded, standing tall beside her. "We came here as visitors. Now we are teachers, yes, but not in the way we expected. We are guides. And they are learning the value of cooperation, trust, and patience." Daniel added, "It's remarkable. We are learning from them too. Their curiosity, their careful observation, the way they watch and think, it's like nothing we've ever seen." The valley changed slowly. Small shelters and gardens dotted the landscape, but they never crowded the creatures' paths. Water channels shimmered in the sun, guiding streams to pools and plants. Creatures moved confidently through the space, some alone, some in groups, always alert but no longer fighting constantly. They had begun to understand safety, the value of teamwork, and the humans' peaceful intentions. The golden-eyed creature remained a leader among its kind. It often returned to the human side, curious, observing, and helping. It nudged smaller creatures toward tasks, guided them to safer areas, and even seemed to anticipate dangers. Its actions reflected a growing intelligence that went beyond instinct. Thomas watched from a hill one evening, looking down at the valley. The humans worked together with the creatures, side by side, without force, without dominance, simply showing and guiding. "We didn't conquer this world," he said quietly. "We are part of it now. And it is teaching us too." Olivia smiled, noting the golden-eyed creature leading a small group toward the water system Daniel had built. "They are learning balance, patience, and cooperation. They are forming their own bonds." Daniel laughed softly. "It's like watching a new society grow. One we helped guide but never forced." Months passed on Calith, and the quiet valley began to change in ways no human had imagined. What had once been a simple camp of tents and shelters grew into small buildings made of stone, wood, and the planet's strong vines. Fields that had been empty stretches of dirt now glowed green under the sun, planted with vegetables, fruits, and hardy crops. Water ran through small canals and pools, designed carefully by Olivia, ensuring that every settlement had clean water. Daniel built machines that moved water, ground grains, and carried supplies, making life easier for both humans and creatures. The creatures adapted quickly. Those that had once wandered alone now carried tools, tilled fields, and learned how to plant seeds in neat rows. Small groups of them worked together, moving stones, building fences, and repairing shelters. Olivia watched in wonder as a group of creatures learned to operate a simple water pump she had designed. Their movements were careful, deliberate, and surprisingly skilled. Thomas walked among them, noting how their eyes followed instructions without fear. "They're learning not just by watching, they are thinking," he said softly to Daniel. Communication between humans and creatures grew steadily. At first it was gestures, sounds, and shared observation. The humans noticed patterns in the creature's movements. The flick of a tail, the rise of a shoulder, a clicking sound that meant attention or warning. Olivia began to respond with simple gestures and tones. Soon the creatures could understand when humans asked for help, or when they needed to step back. In return, humans could anticipate the creatures' needs, their moods, and even their plans. It was a language born of patience and trust, built slowly over months of observation and gentle guidance. The forests, mountains, and deserts of Calith were no longer just dangerous places for survival. They became resources, playgrounds, and centers of learning. Humans and creatures worked together to build paths through the forest, bridges across rivers, and simple watchtowers on the hills. Even the creatures who had once preferred solitude now gathered near human settlements. They shared tasks, meals, and spaces, learning that cooperation meant safety and abundance. Thomas oversaw the organization of the settlements. He did not issue commands or demand obedience. Instead, he showed the creatures ways to improve their lives, how to build sturdier shelters, store food safely, and protect water supplies. Slowly, the creatures began to imitate him and suggest their own ideas. One day, a tall, armored creature approached Thomas, nudging stones into place to create a wall around a field. Thomas smiled. "You understand the value of structure," he said. The creature clicked in response, as if acknowledging the compliment. Olivia designed energy systems using solar panels from their ship and simple wind machines. She taught the creatures how to maintain them, and soon, small lights and pumps ran without constant human effort. Daniel built carts, grinders, and simple lifting devices that made it easier for both species to move heavy items. The creatures watched carefully and then used these machines themselves, sometimes improving the designs in clever ways the humans had not considered. Villages began to rise across the valley. Small homes clustered together, surrounded by fields and water channels. Creatures of all types mingled freely, some sitting beside humans as they worked, others watching from nearby rocks or trees. Even the shyest creatures gradually stepped closer, curious and cautious, learning from the growing community. Thomas walked from village to village, checking progress, ensuring safety and offering guidance when needed. He never commanded. The creatures followed willingly, guided by example, not fear. Over time, patterns formed in the settlements. The creatures assigned tasks to themselves, planting in the mornings, gathering in the afternoons, and returning to shared shelters at night. They learned to warn each other about dangers, a sudden storm, a weak bridge, or a dangerous animal, and humans quickly understood these signals. Together, they established a system of cooperation that relied on trust, observation, and careful planning. One day, Olivia noticed a group of young creatures experimenting with tools on their own. They dug small holes, built tiny fences, and tested ways to move water. She knelt beside them, guiding a hand here, showing a technique there. "You are learning quickly," she said. The creatures clicked and chirped, repeating her gestures, trying to understand. Daniel watched nearby, impressed. "It's not just teaching," he said. "They are thinking. They are creating." Even the forests and mountains contributed to this new society. Creatures and humans worked together to harvest fruits, collect clean water, and bring materials for construction. Paths were made through dense woods, bridges spanned rushing streams, and watchtowers gave a safe view of the surrounding land. The creatures explored freely but returned to the villages at night, carrying food, water, and knowledge. As months turned into a year, the settlements grew into a network of villages, connected by paths, bridges, and shared knowledge. The creatures had learned not only how to live safely but how to improve their world. Those who had been solitary hunters now cooperated in small groups, planting crops, tending gardens, and building shelters. Young creatures played near the humans, imitating simple tasks, learning through observation and gradually understanding the value of teamwork. The humans continued their careful guidance. They did not impose rules or create strict hierarchies. They led by example, showing patience, respect, and fairness. The creatures followed willingly, driven by curiosity, intelligence, and the rewards of cooperation. Together, they built a society that was stronger, safer, and more vibrant than anything Caliph had seen in centuries. One evening, Thomas stood on a hill overlooking a village. Lanterns glowed softly, children, both human and creature, played together, and fields shimmered with the light of the twin moons. "Look at what we've built," he said quietly. "Not by force, not by fear, but by guiding, helping, and trusting them." Olivia and Daniel joined him, smiling at the sight. "It's more than survival now," Olivia said. "It's civilization." Daniel nodded. "A civilization that grew naturally, with patience and care. And it's theirs as much as ours." In the quiet night, the villages hummed with life. Creatures moved through their tasks with confidence, humans worked alongside them, and the forests and mountains no longer seemed threatening. Instead, they provided the foundations for a new society. A society built on trust, guidance, and shared knowledge. Caliph had changed. What had once been a wild and untamed planet had become a home for a growing civilization, guided by humans but shaped by the creatures themselves. Cooperation, curiosity, and respect formed the core of this society. The humans had returned not as conquerors but as teachers, and in return, they had learned from Caliph's inhabitants the power of patience, observation, and harmony. And in this valley, beneath the twin moons and endless sky, a civilization was rising, strong, united, and ready to face the future together. One morning, the sky over Caliph darkened suddenly. Clouds gathered fast, thicker than any the humans had seen. Winds howled across the valley, bending trees and lifting dust from the dry soil. Olivia ran outside, scanning the horizon. "It's coming fast," she shouted over the wind. Daniel secured the water pumps, and Thomas called out instructions to the creatures. The animals and humans alike felt the tension in the air. The storm hit with violent force. Rain fell in heavy sheets, flooding the fields and washing away young crops. Trees snapped under the wind and shelters shook. Creatures screamed, barked, and hissed, panicking as they darted in every direction. The humans moved quickly but calmly, knowing that fear would spread faster than the storm itself. Thomas directed creatures and humans alike towards safe shelters. "Follow the paths we made," he yelled. "Keep calm. Help each other." Small groups of creatures huddled together, guided by their golden-eyed leader, which darted back and forth, showing the safest routes. Daniel moved through the camp, checking machines, reinforcing roofs, and redirecting water away from homes. He handed tools to creatures, showing them how to strengthen walls and secure gardens. The creatures hesitated at first, unsure what to do, but they soon began copying his actions. They piled stones against weak walls, tied vines to secure shelters, and dug trenches to divert water. Olivia worked with a group of creatures near the central garden. She distributed food and directed irrigation, keeping water flowing to the remaining crops. The creatures watched her carefully, learning which plants needed protection and how to share the limited resources wisely. They mimicked her motions, learning to measure, pour, and protect the food supply. Hours passed and the storm raged on. Thunder cracked across the sky, and lightning lit the dark clouds. But amidst the chaos, the valley was alive with cooperation. Creatures moved in small groups, carrying supplies, securing shelters, and following the humans' calm guidance. They began calling to each other with clicks and low sounds, warning of weak areas or flooded paths. Slowly, the fear that had overtaken them turned into action. Thomas climbed a hill to see the bigger picture. Villages were still shaking under the wind, but creatures were now organized, helping each other and moving with purpose. "They're learning quickly," he said, shouting instructions over the wind. "Resilience is stronger than fear." By nightfall, the storm began to ease. The wind lessened, the rain slowed, and the clouds parted just enough for the twin moons to shine weakly over the valley. The humans and creatures were exhausted but alive. Many shelters had been damaged, crops washed away, and paths blocked, but the community had survived. The next day the valley was quiet. Humans and creatures emerged to assess the damage. At first, despair was evident, crops flattened, shelters broken, but then something remarkable happened. The creatures, led by the golden-eyed one, began organizing repairs on their own. They worked together to rebuild homes, clear blocked paths, and salvage what remained of the gardens. Daniel showed them how to improve structures to withstand future storms, and they quickly understood and applied the lessons. Olivia set up new irrigation systems, teaching the creatures how to control water flow even under heavy rain. They learned to anticipate flooding and protect their crops better than before. Thomas coordinated the repair of shelters and shared techniques for stronger walls, faster repairs, and safer living spaces. In the days that followed, the valley transformed again. Crops were replanted, stronger and more resilient. Shelters were reinforced, some even improved with better layouts and materials. Paths were rerouted to avoid flooding, and the community developed plans to prepare for future storms. The creatures moved confidently now, carrying tools, giving signals, and working together with humans as equals. The humans noticed the change in the creatures. Where panic had once ruled, patience and cooperation now guided actions. Creatures shared resources without being told, helped one another rebuild, and even suggested new ways to improve the settlements. The humans realized that their guidance had done more than restore what was lost. It had taught the creatures resilience, teamwork, and planning. Thomas walked through a village one afternoon, watching creatures work alongside humans. "Strength alone doesn't save a society," he said quietly to Olivia. "Survival is about trust, patience, and collaboration." Olivia nodded, smiling as she saw young creatures helping each other plant new crops. "They've learned quickly. They understand that working together brings more safety and abundance than fighting or panic ever could." Daniel added, "And we're learning from them too. Their problem-solving, how they communicate and organize, it's amazing. They are teaching us about their world while we guide them in ours." By the end of the week, Kalitha's settlements were stronger than before. Shelters stood firm, fields were replanted and thriving, and creatures moved with confidence and purpose. The storm had been a test, and the humans and creatures had passed together. The valley was alive with movement and energy. Creatures worked in harmony with humans, using the skills they had learned to maintain crops, protect homes, and watch over younger or weaker members of their groups. Villages were connected with clear paths, water systems ran smoothly, and machines built by Daniel made daily tasks easier for everyone. Even the forests and mountains seemed less dangerous now. Creatures explored and gathered resources with caution but also with confidence, returning to the villages with supplies and knowledge. Communication between species had improved further, and humans could understand gestures, sounds, and subtle signs of intent. Kalith had changed. No longer a wild, unpredictable world, it was now a growing civilization. Creatures had learned to trust, to cooperate, and to plan. Humans had shown patience, guidance, and leadership without force. Together, they had built something stronger than individual survival. They had built a community that could face storms, challenges, and the unknown together. One evening, Thomas, Olivia, and Daniel stood on a hill overlooking the valley. The twin moons cast silver light across fields, shelters, and bustling creatures. Young ones played near adults, some carrying small tools, others helping to repair minor damage. "We came to this world as visitors," Thomas said softly. "Now we are teachers and companions. And they have become more than students, they are partners." Olivia smiled, watching the golden-eyed creature guide a group of others in rebuilding a fence. "They've learned more than I imagined," she said. "Trust, patience, collaboration. They understand all of it." Daniel laughed quietly. "And we've learned from them too. Their resilience, their intelligence, their curiosity, it's inspiring." The valley hummed with quiet energy. Life on Calith was no longer a fight for survival. It was a civilization rising from patience, guidance, and mutual trust. The humans and creatures had faced disaster together and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. Calith had become a home, a community, and a society where humans and creatures lived side by side, learning, growing, and thriving. The storm had tested them, and together, they had learned the most important lesson of all. Survival was not about strength alone. It was about collaboration, understanding, and the bonds that unite all who share a world. Years passed on Calith, and the valley that had once been wild and untamed changed beyond recognition. Small villages grew into towns, and towns grew into cities. Fields that had been filled with predators and cautious creatures were now open spaces where children, both human and creature, ran and played together under the twin suns. The air was filled with laughter, the hum of machines, and the sounds of life thriving in harmony. Thomas, older now, walked through the capital city with Olivia and Daniel. He noticed how different the world felt. Skyscrapers made from lightweight, strong materials reached above the treetops. Their surfaces gleamed in the sun, powered by clean energy systems designed to use the planet's wind and sunlight. Water flowed freely through canals and pipelines, ensuring every home and farm had enough. Markets bustled with activity as humans and creatures sold crops, tools, and crafts, working together with ease and respect. Creatures moved confidently among the streets, carrying baskets, operating simple machines, and guiding younger creatures in their tasks. Some managed farms that stretched across green valleys, planting and harvesting crops with precision. Others operated workshops, using tools that humans had taught them to use. They had learned to plan, organize, and cooperate in ways that had once seemed impossible. Thomas paused at a plaza filled with both humans and creatures. Children chased each other around fountains while adults, both species, traded goods, fixed machines, and worked side by side. He watched the golden-eyed creature, now older and larger, guiding a group of younger ones and tending a small garden. It stopped occasionally, looking back to see that humans watched approvingly but did not interfere. Thomas smiled quietly. "They have learned so much, and they teach us every day." Olivia pointed to a nearby solar array, where creatures were adjusting panels to maximize energy collection. "They understand technology, teamwork, and even maintenance. They've adapted beyond what I thought possible." Daniel added, "And they do it willingly. No one is forcing them. They choose to follow the methods we showed them because they work. That's what makes this civilization strong." The streets of the capital were alive but orderly. Humans walked alongside creatures without fear or hesitation. Markets, workshops, farms, and schools operated efficiently. Knowledge and experience passed between the two species freely. Where humans taught tools, planning, and organization, the creatures contributed observation, adaptability, and keen understanding of the land. Together they built systems that allowed everyone to live comfortably and safely. Forests and mountains, once feared and untamed, were now carefully managed. Creatures led exploration parties to collect resources while humans ensured that natural habitats remained protected. Bridges and paths wound through the terrain, connecting cities and towns without harming the environment. Even predators, once dominant and threatening, were now part of a balanced ecosystem, respected and observed but no longer a constant danger to the settlements. Thomas, Olivia, and Daniel walked along a wide street lined with shops and homes. Children waved to them, some riding small carts pulled by creatures, others carrying tools or food. Thomas watched as a creature and a human child worked together to lift a crate into a market stall. He nodded to himself. "This is what we came here for, not to rule but to guide. To show what is possible with patience and respect." Olivia smiled. "They have taken our guidance and made it their own. Civilization here is not just built by humans, it's built with them and by them." Daniel looked at a small water tower pumping clean water into the city. "We survived by teaching but they've survived by learning. And now they thrive." As the day ended, the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city. The lights of homes, streets, and towers sparkled like stars fallen to the earth. Creatures and humans alike paused to enjoy the calm evening, some sitting in plazas, others walking through gardens or playing with children. The sounds of work faded into laughter, soft conversation, and the gentle hum of machines running quietly in the background. From his vantage point on a high balcony, Thomas looked over the city. The streets were alive with life, but the order and harmony were undeniable. Children played safely, markets operated smoothly, and creatures and humans shared the city with balance and mutual respect. He felt a quiet pride. "We built this not with force," he said softly. "Not by domination. But by teaching, guiding, and respecting life. That is how a civilization grows." Olivia and Daniel stood beside him, watching as a creature helped a human elder carry food from a market. "Years ago this planet was wild, dangerous, and uncharted," Olivia said. "Now it is alive with order, cooperation, and understanding. We came as visitors, but we are now part of its story." Daniel nodded. "And it's not just humans who built it. Look around. Every creature here contributes to this society. They've learned teamwork, patience, and intelligence. This is a civilization created together." The golden-eyed creature appeared again, walking beside a young human child. It stopped, looking up at the glowing city and the forests beyond. It clicked softly and the child laughed, mimicking the sound. Thomas watched them, realizing that the bond between humans and creatures had grown stronger than words could express. The forests and mountains surrounding the city were still wild in places, but no longer threatening. Paths, bridges, and careful management allowed safe travel and resource gathering. Water systems carried fresh water from mountain streams to every town. Fields were lush and productive. Homes were sturdy and well-maintained. The balance between nature and civilization was evident everywhere. As the sun finally set, painting the sky with orange and pink, the city glowed with lights powered by wind and solar energy. Children laughed, creatures called to each other, and humans moved through the streets with calm purpose. The past, full of struggle and survival, felt distant. Calith had been wild once, but the efforts of humans and the learning of creatures had transformed it into something new, a thriving civilization where both species shared knowledge, safety, and life together. Thomas stood quietly taking in the view. "They survived the wild," he said, "and we helped them build a future." Olivia added, "We came here to teach, but we learned too. About patience, observation, and respect. Civilization is stronger when it is built together." Daniel smiled. "Calith is no longer just a wild planet. It's a home, a society, a world transformed." Under the twin moons and the sparkling cities, humans and creatures alike felt the same truth. They had survived together, grown together, and created something lasting. The lessons of trust, cooperation, and respect had turned a wild world into a thriving civilization. Calith had survived its past, but now it thrived. And as the final light of the sun fell over the forests and cities, everyone understood clearly, the creatures had survived. But humans had helped them build civilization.